Okay, so here is my Tomb King army. Uh, Left side here, I have a heavy anti-cavalry flank coming on here just in case. Um, of a basic unit of skeleton spearmen. The Regiment Renown version of that same unit, basically just the elite version of that. And a Tomb Prince. The Tomb Prince is such a great anti-large unit. Um, Spoilers, I'm fighting the Dwarves. They have no anti-large whatsoever. So you'll see how that comes to play in the future. But basically, this is my basic Tomb King army I always bring. The purposes of all that anti-large is to protect my Casket of Souls, my artillery unit. It rains terror against the enemy, and normally they come charge it, and I have these spearmen to respond to it. My basic fighting force are the Tomb Guard. I think they're great units. However, against the dwarves, as you'll see, armor piercing matters. I don't have any armor piercing as one of the attributes for these units. However, this unit, the Tomb Scorpion, does have armor piercing. It's a fantastic unit, and you'll see what happens when you decide to put one of your best fighting units on the front line. So, my next armor piercing unit that I have is the Ushapti. I have 2 units of these. You can see I only have 16 total per stack. And, you know, these units are rather large compared to other infantry units. But the idea is if these guys can get to their enemy, they're going to tear them apart. Foreshadowing. I have another anti-large skeleton unit here, not knowing any better, but again, this is the typical setup I always have for Tomb Kings. It's a highly staggered unit that I end up having such that no single enemy spell can wipe out multiple stacks of units. So, kind of finishing off the rest of my unit composition here. The Ushapti Great Bow, these guys have such a high range, you can see that. The bottom left, 255. They're armor piercing as well. Unfortunately, the way I use these is not to go instill armor piercing damage. Let's go check out my main lord in this fight. That is the one and only Cetra. So this guy's an anti whatever I want it to be. He has some spells that I've brought, mainly as debuffs and buffs for my own units. He has an ability that will explode around him, and anything caught in his path, anything bad caught in his path will get damaged by it. I've mounted him on a horse so that he can quickly run around and get rid of any unit I need to. I learned this from a lesson where I fought a Skaven army, and they constantly kept chasing my lord, such that they just killed him. It was a bunch of assassins that the rats had. Anyways, my last final unit on this side of the field are the Nehakara horsemen. It's the mid-tier horsemen that the Tomb Kings have, and I use these, you know, just to flank, right? I'm not expecting a lot. I'm expecting flanks. I'm expecting hits to leadership. I'm expecting catching units off guard. So let's quickly avoid looking at the Dwarven army and look at the last unit, which are these carrion units. I've hidden these behind the enemy unit lines. These are, I guess, a vanguard deployment. But they have a very simple purpose as well, which is distract any kind of archer or artillery unit the enemy may have. So now let's look at the guys themselves, the dwarves. This is a typical formation I should have expected. I'm not very familiar with fighting dwarves, hence you can tell from the beginning I don't have much armor piercing. I don't have much need for the anti-large units I've brought. But let's take a look. So you have a very highly armored, high leadership front line here, and they're protecting some very, very expensive units. They're, you know, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 different sets of cannons. Flame cannons and their normal cannons have different range. You can see here. So this is a unit that is going to make, this is an army that's going to make you come to them, because they can just bombard you to death. And once you get here, it's going to be even nastier, because you know, it's going to be hard to get through this line over here. So of course, originally I'm thinking, well, they have a lot of effort here. I'm probably going to try to come from the sides, right? Speaking of their sides, they don't have much here. You can get to this area over here, and it's game, the world's yours. So Thunderers are their ranged units. They're highly effective at armor piercing. They can hurt very badly if you let them hit you. So he has 3 units over here. He's also protecting his rear with a small unit of Longbeards. These Slayers, you can see, have no armor whatsoever. I didn't know what the purpose of these Slayers are. Spoilers, they're anti-cav. So let's get this show on the road. So, from the get-go, I have to charge my entire army as fast as I can against the enemy. The enemy here is focusing on one particular unit, and that is my Tomb Scorpion. They've immediately recognized that as the biggest threat to them, and they're going to try to do everything they can to take it out before it even gets to me. Meanwhile, my Casket of Souls is going to be attacking a single section, which is that center, that precious center. So let's take a look what it looks like when you get fired upon. It's pretty effective. Okay, but again, it's a war of attrition. You don't want to sit there and trade constant artillery battles with somebody who's brought a significantly more than you have. You can see here, horsemen are going in for the flank. Where are my Carians? Carians should be coming in to try to occupy these flame cannons, because once my units get in range for the flame cannons, you can see the minimum gauge distance for these guys. It's coming up. It's gonna get very bad for almost all my units. So speed is key. I need to get to my units fast. Luckily, this is sarcastic by the way, I have some slow ass infantry, right? Tomb Guard are not very fast. None of my units are very fast. So as my units over here taking plenty of damage, the Ushapti, I have them trying to take out the cannons as well. So they're over here trying to take the cannons out. As you can tell, the Thunderers are now in range against my Ushapti. The Ushapti are one of my most expensive units, and if they can engage against the enemy, they can do a lot of damage. But look at that leadership, just got decimated. So they're gonna rout and crumble almost immediately. I have a cavalry charge trying to take out the Thunderers over here, but you can see that that's not a very good formation. They're gonna hit things they're not supposed to be hitting. He brought his Slayers in to protect them. Little did I know, Slayers are anti-cav, because anti-cav are going to get demolished. The rest of my army is coming in from the flanks, including essentially the main man himself. Carians are coming in, trying to occupy these flame cannons. The rest of my units are just trying to come in and circle. You know, these units are ready. So the front line is very messy right now. Tomb Guard are engaged against Longbeards. Not very powerful units, but if you don't have armor piercing, you're not going to do much damage. Chances are you're going to lose. They're constantly attacking with their cannons. You saw my most expensive unit just now. That was the Tomb Scorpion. It's gone. It's over. So here we are trying to get all sides in. We were able to get all sides in. Just now you saw Sentra do one of his explosion attacks. It mops the floor if he's fully surrounded by dwarves, but if not, not very effective. It hurts the enemy only type of explosion. The spear units over here, you know, they're here mainly just to kind of occupy some of the enemy. They're not going to do a lot of damage. They're just there to kind of sustain. You can see they have some untouched Thunderers over here, able to just wreak havoc against my units. So the front line's almost non-existent at this point. No one's really fighting here. What I forgot to mention here, take a look at this. This is a bad setup, a bad matchup. my Tomb Prince, which is an anti-large, has no anti-large to fight. My opponent has sent his Lord, who is a melee champion, to pretty much decimate my Tomb Prince. So he's taking a lot of damage in just now, and he doesn't have a very effective target to go fight. These are some routed enemy units that are coming back to the fight. That noise you just heard means I can summon my Ushtabi. You'll see them coming over here. That's the Tomb King's perk at tier 3. So I get another unit of Ushtabi. But the fight isn't looking well for the Tomb King. So you can see I'm taking a lot of damage. I'm down to, you know, less than a quarter of my units, and they're dying over and over and over again. Foolishly, here I am, Cetra fighting his enemy Lord, which is not a good idea. Considering the amount of life Cetra has, he needs to get in this stack of melee units and try to make them break. We're looking at their leadership and saying, okay, most of the Tomb King army has no leadership left. Most of my units on the right side, front side, completely routed. Even though we broke through earlier, the enemy units have such high leadership, they're coming back against us. We don't have much left. Ushapti over here are doing just fine, but they're almost out of melee damage over here. Sorry, I'm out of ammunition. Meanwhile, these guys have plenty of ammunition. So anything that survives any of these encounters are going to get gunned down. In the meantime, Cetra is doing what he can. I don't think he's going to survive this match. As you can see, the tides of battle is going less and less in my favor every minute. If only these guys were armor piercing, you know, they would stand a chance against these dwarves, but they're not. So the damage they're probably inflicting against the dwarves, not very high at all. So, even though we've finally managed to kill all the slayers, it's not really, doesn't matter. Look at all these units that are coming back to the fray and fight against any unit that survives. So here you go. That's the game. Plenty of lessons learned here, right? Learn your opponent very well. The dwarves do not have anti-large. They do not have large monsters that you need to worry about. They do not have any need to bring units that don't have armor piercing. Let's look at some of the statistics here. So, Casket of Souls did great, right? 130 kills against a Dwarven army, that's very high. So, one of the solutions I could have done, there's two different ways I could have approached this. I could have stacked my artillery and tried to out-artillery the dwarves, because you saw that box formation was dangerous. Anything that hits in that zone is going to hit something, so that's very effective. That had I gone that way and forced dwarves to come to me. But if I'm going to come to them, there's almost no need for that entire unit stack up here. I don't need Tomb Princes, I don't need Spearmen, I don't need a regiment of renowned Spearmen, that's for sure. I almost don't really need Tomb Guard either. I could have brought significantly more cheaper units, you know, skeleton warriors, just a swordsman version of it, and tried to occupy and take the brunt of some of those cannon attacks instead of, you know, my Tomb Scorpion, one of the more expensive units that did almost no damage because he pretty much got decimated on his way there. You can see the armor piercing units that I actually had did plenty of damage, you know, when they got to the dwarves. But this is the one that you saw in the beginning that barely made it to the dwarves before they were decimated. Again, carrions are not there to do damage, they're there to distract. Horsemen, I could have microed that better and not charged them into the exact counter. I didn't recognize the dwarven counter, so that's the dwarven counter. Slayers, they killed plenty of horsemen. Not as much as you can see, their cannons. Their cannons, all of them combined, did about half of the damage of his entire army, right? That's 400 kills to my entire units. That's plenty. His Thunderer surprisingly didn't get a lot of hits in. I don't think he had them placed in a position where they could always cover from each other. Um, Nobody else really surprised me. So there's two approaches. Attack him in mass with a lot more units, a lot more cheaper units, and do that same surround. Hide your more specialized armor-piercing units from behind, or bring a lot more artillery and punish him for being in a box.